Hey everybody, welcome to episode 10 of Composing with Jerry. We're still working on the Brazen Serpent, and I made some good progress this week in two fronts. One, I've got kind of an update about the choir performance, and then the second about the actual composition itself. For the choir, I know last week I said that as long as we weren't singing La La La, I was pretty happy with the fact that it could sing any lyrics at all. And that's true to a point. I'm still a little disappointed with some of the vowels that came through and the lack of some consonants. So I really can't really perceive some of the words, knowing what they say. If I didn't already know the words, I wouldn't probably be able to figure it out. Well, I normally would just let that be, because that's what I've had to do in the past. But I came across an AI-based choir product that was partnering with MuseScore called Cantai. And it works where you load the Cantai instrument and it analyzes all of your choral parts and your lyrics, and it generates a performance of that. And I listened to some of the samples that were, the demo versions of things, and I was really impressed with how realistic it sounds. But it's completely the wrong style from what I want. It's a very contemporary sounding choir, like where the microphone's right by the voices and they sing more of in a kind of a jazz choir or a Broadway musical or something like that. It's much more that. The vowels are a lot more Americanized. The consonants are spot on, and they blend well together. But it's completely the wrong style. But then it dawned on me, I got kind of an idea of like, well, they offer you can either pay by month or pay for the year, and I signed up for just 1 month just to try this out. I didn't want to replace my current choral performance with this Cantai choir library, but I wanted to enhance it with it. So I loaded it up, and then I saved that recording of the Cantai voices doing it. And what it is, I layered it on top of the existing Hollywood Choirs performance and made sure everything lined up. But I had to lower it in the mix quite a bit so that it didn't overpower the existing performance. But what it did is it kind of really cleared up a lot of the consonants issues as well as the vowel pronunciations. It's enough where you can sort of hear it in there, but it really does help with the diction. When you have it mixed in with the choir, with the orchestra and everything, it's much less perceptible, but yet it helps with the diction. So that's a plus. I would love it if that Cantai would have a larger choral, traditional choir version of that, so that it wasn't more contemporary sounding. It was more using the traditional choral vowels and that kind of thing, and much bigger, like more voices. But until that happens, this is probably what I'm going to end up using. So secondly, the composition itself. My conundrum this week was, how do you write the voice of God? Is it a loud booming voice? Is it a big fanfare? Or is it something much more subtle? And in my experience, whenever I felt that I've been hearing the voice of God to me, it's always come in a very, very, almost like a little gentle breeze. When I was a kid, we called it the still small voice. And I've always felt that to be the case. It's always come gently and in a very peaceful way. And it's usually just comes through thoughts and perceptions and inspiration that way. And so I thought, well, how do I write that? I came up with several ideas, and they didn't really seem to be very successful until I built it up to this very little small section where it was just high strings doing these a little bit of a chord progression, and it's almost a whisper. And then I introduce the French horn, which I always wanted to use as the Lord's voice. But again, it has to be done in a certain way, otherwise it seems like it's a little incongruent with what I perceive the Lord's voice to be like. But then the Lord's telling Moses, hey, you need to build this brazen serpent, which then leads to Moses starting to build the serpent. And I made it about halfway through that building section. And then I'll discuss that more at length in the episode. So why don't we go ahead and get started on that? And then we'll discuss everything afterward and see where this is going. Folks, there's some light at the end of this tunnel. It's going to happen. So I'm going to put on my headphones. And so I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to let you guys listen to the new Cantai Choir AI library. And that way you can get an idea of just how contemporary and modern it sounds versus what's already been established. And so, I mean, really, it just reads your lyrics, analyzes the music, and I don't have to do, unlike the EastWest library, I don't have to have syllables for each one of these notes. As long as that word extension is there, it automatically knows what to do. So, all right, I'm going to start with measure 72.
For now, to sorrow must I tune my song, and set my heart to lonesome saddest song.
See what I mean? It's very contemporary sounding. There's a lot of scooping up to pitches. There's a lot of the vowels diction is very modern and American sounding versus more like British sounding or traditional choral. So let's go ahead and listen to the next section, which is the Moses. And this is kind of interesting because with all of the different words, it actually breaks it up a little bit. So there's some space between each of those words. I'm starting a measure before.
Moses, Moses, why have you brought us out of Egypt? Moses, Moses, why have you brought us out of Egypt? To die, to die, to die, to die. There is no bread, there is no water, and our soul loatheth this light bread. To die, out of Egypt, to die.
So you see how that doesn't, I mean, I'm going to put it in the context with the regular orchestra, and then you're going to see how kind of out of place that sounds. Let's go ahead and put that section. So we'll start off with 31 again. 131.
Moses,
see how it's so much louder and more present.
Why have you brought us out of Egypt? Moses, Moses, why have you brought us out of Egypt? To die, to die, to die, to die.
Okay, so it doesn't carry over as well when it comes with the large, louder sections of the orchestra. But if you notice when it says, "Why have you brought us out of Egypt?" There's a lift between each of those words, and it helps with the diction and the timing of that a little bit better than it does with the East-West. So anyway, obviously I'm not using them during the snake biting section because it gets lost. It sounds really kind of silly. But then again, I'm using this is when Moses we have sinned, Moses we have sinned. I'm using them in conjunction, and we're going to listen to that now actually. So I'm going to bring up Logic Pro, and we're going to listen to. Okay, so I'm going to. Sorry, my camera's in the way. I'm going to mute the choir, the new choir, and just let's get to the beginning section of. I think this is what we want right here. It's a little muddy there, but now I'm going to bring in the Cantai choir, and we'll see how that helps it a little bit. So you see how that enhances that. It's not necessarily perfect, but it does make some of the muddleness of that clear up a little bit. I did have to do some lining up things a little bit better so that because sometimes it seems like the men were a little ahead of the women, and sometimes it seemed like the women were a little more ahead of the men. So I had to mess around with some of those spaces, and then I also make sure that the Cantai version of that lined up the way it was supposed to as well. So I had to do a little bit of cutting and adjusting and nudging here and there. So, but that's what it's going to sound like. Kind of that. And I still haven't done the mix yet completely, but that's more or less what that part's going to sound like. You lose some of the diction in the louder portion when it says, to die out of Egypt, to die, right up here. But that's not something I can really help. I don't want the choir to overpower the orchestra at that point. Actually, I want the orchestra to overpower the choir a little bit there, because it's really powerful and it's meant to be. So, all right. So that's the discussion about the choir. Let's talk about the actual, I'm going to save that and quit. Let's go into the what I've done since. So let's move up to, wow, we got some, all right. So I'm going to, now, because the Cantai is set up as my choir right now, it's going to do the ooze for when Moses was represented by this solo bassoon is speaking to the Lord, and we're just going to start from that where he starts to come in, which is we're on 224. See how it's really in your face. But this actually works well with the other one as well. So now we're coming up to the Lord. The Lord is going to reply. So I have this kind of introductory string section. Here comes the soft. Moses. Here comes the voice of the Lord, which is doubling with the cellos. Here's the horn part. Okay, we're going to stop there. We'll discuss this a little bit. So I wanted to have the Lord come in here and kind of tell Moses what he wanted him to do. And it's very brief. You know, I mean, how long does it really take for the Lord to tell you, hey, you need to build this brazen serpent? But I figured, you know, we're kind of in the key of E flat major, but with the lowered second and the lowered sixth in the scale, because it's more of an Arabic or some sort of exotic Middle Eastern kind of a scale. And so it's not true E flat major, but the tonal center is E flat major, and I want to get to G. And so I used what are called chromatic mediants to get from E flat major up a third to G. There are no like true pivot tones or pivot chords that get you there, and I didn't want it to sound abrupt, so I kind of did this little kind of way around it. So I'm just gonna play that again from when the Lord starts talking. I'll go a measure before that. This isn't really mixed yet as far as the dynamics, but it will be. So here, this is like a 5/7 of something, but then, so it's going to G. On this D to G. And so then I bring in This is where we start to build the Brazen Serpent. I have employed an anvil. I only have 3. There's a low, a middle, and a high. But it's not prominent, but it's there enough where you can hear it. I still have the timpani and the bass drum doing their little swells because people are still getting bit at this point. But we're building. We're starting this building. I have the lower strings doing at least the violas and the cellos doing col legno, which sounds like this. Kind of a tick-tock type of thing, but it's giving us okay, so we go up a third, but then back down to the G, then we go up a third, and then we establish our new tonal center in there, up a third, back down, up a third again, establishing new key, tonal center. Now we're on D, up a third, back down to D. Anyway, so I kind of liked that because it gives us momentum. And so this is what all the strings sound like when we're doing that. I bring in the spiccato strings doing these little patterns to help out. So we're going to start off with this right here. I have okay, so I'm just going to start this. Just do the strings. Harmonics happening. So now we're back into this, or we've it's a repeating kind of a sequence. And that's where it stopped. That's the accompaniment little part. But then I decided that when I bring this in, I wanted I'm going to play everything other than what's happening with the woodwinds. So up here, I have the oboe starting a little melody, and then when I go up to that third, I bring in the bassoon, who is Moses. And then I bring in the flute, and everybody's still kind of repeating. It's almost a repeated pattern, but you're building, right? And it's just like you're building the Brazen Serpent, you're building this musical architecture, but it's just a matter of sequencing up a third each time. And then I bring in the clarinet when we get up to the D. So we start off in G, we go up to B, and now we're on D. And I think I might not continue this thirds thing and start more of establishing and doing more musicalness that's a little bit more interesting than just this. But so I'm just going to play before we listen to what the oboes and the woodwinds are doing. I'm just going to play from the strings, or the percussion, all the way down to the bottom here. So you can hear the anvil there. So okay. So we don't, by the time we get to this part, you don't really hear a lot of that's happening in the strings because of what's happening in the woodwinds. We're gonna do the woodwinds here now. So I'm going to bring in, basically we're gonna follow the woodwinds. We've already heard what the percussion and the strings are doing. So let's go ahead and listen to that. Here comes the oboe. Repeats that same. Here comes the bassoon. Now I bring in the flute. Repeated that same thing. Now we're in the now. So I didn't finish bringing out this the horns. Actually, this is just the test right here. I wanted to see what that sounded like, and it's full because I'm trying to also introduce brass instruments as well in here because my Brazen Serpent theme is going to be mostly a brass choir in this majestic, heroic thing, being the primary thing you're going to be hearing when the orchestra is kind of playing accompaniment to it. I haven't gotten to that theme yet. I'm still working on it up here. But I want to introduce some of these instruments as we're layering up and we're building this up. So as the Brazen Serpent is getting built, you start hearing some brass instruments coming through. This was just a test. I'm not sure I'm going in this direction yet. So really, basically, I'm really pretty positive up to the key change here at 309. This is still really new, so it could be changed, and it might be. I like the simplicity of it, but it's still carrying momentum, and it's getting more complex as we're bringing these different melodies in with the different woodwind instruments, and then yeah. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this. I still haven't decided what I'm going to do next because I really don't want to continue the same patterns building and building because I need to have more. I don't know. I want to make this next building portion of it to be a little faster paced, a little bit more hinting at the new theme, which I need to come up with first so that I can introduce it little bit by little bit. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do.